What's going on, everybody? We're going to talk about changing a receptacle today. First thing you're going to need is the new receptacle. Doesn't matter what type you're putting in, what color, it's all essentially the same process. But in this case, we're going to go from a regular receptacle to a GFCI. So I have the cover that's going to match that. We're going to put that aside. And you're going to need a few tools. I've got the Phillips screwdriver, the flat screwdriver, a wire stripper in case the wire does not match up. And I've got my impact with the Phillips tip. You don't need the impact. As long as you got the screwdriver, you're good. It's just going to take you a few more seconds to run the long screws in. First thing you want to do is determine if you do or do not have power so you don't get electrocuted. So if you have a glow stick like this, you can say you have power, go find the breaker, come back. And if it does not turn red and flash, then you're good. In some cases though, this cannot go off and there could be no power and it could go off. So if you want to be a little more cautious and for sure, get a voltmeter out and you check for voltage with the voltmeter. In this case, we have 120 volts, give or take. It's not going to always be the same. It could be 110, 115, 120. Depends on what the power is at your house. Coming from your energy company, it can fluctuate. So we have 120 volts on here now. The other way you can test this is if you just get something that plugs in a vacuum, a hair blow dryer, plug it in, and if it works, you got power. Once you find the breaker and it doesn't work, then you can determine that you don't have power at it anymore. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the panel and we're going to find power to this. And I've already determined what breaker it was. So I've turned this off now. In your case, you might have to go back and forth a few times. And now you will not have light. So I recommend getting a flashlight. So I've got my flashlight on here. Now we can see again. And what we are going to do first is remove the cover plate. It's good to know that the light off in the room would be a good sign that there's not power here, but you do want to check again before touching anything to make sure that you do not have power. I've already checked this twice, so I know that it does not have power. You can check back again with your voltmeter or your appliance that you plug in to test it. So the first thing we're going to have to do is remove the receptacle from the box. And like I said, you can do this with a screwdriver. It's going to take you a little bit longer, but I'm going to go ahead and use my impact. These screws are a little longer. All right. Once you got the screws out, you can go ahead and pull the receptacle out. This one has some paint on it, so it looks like it is partially stuck here. Pry that off the wall. There may be 10 coats of paint from the time it was changed previously, so it may be hard to get off. Once you have it out, you can go ahead and, if there is electrical tape, remove it. Some people put electrical tape around these so it doesn't touch the sides of the metal box and arc out. But this is a plastic box, so it wouldn't matter. And if it's mounted in, you shouldn't touch on anything unless you're removing it. But whoever wired this wired it wrong in the first place. We can go ahead and take it all apart and then we'll talk about that. So if you're putting in a style of receptacle like this, you can loop the wires around and hook them on in there. The one we're putting in, they go straight in, so we're going to cut them back and strip the wires again and make them straight, or just straighten these out. And if you do use a receptacle like this where you go around it, you want to go clockwise with the screw. So when you tighten the screw up, it tightens up with the wire. If you put the wire counterclockwise and you tighten it down, it's going to want to push the wire out. Whoever put these in, put them in to never come out. So, once you got this all taken apart, cut this one. It's alright if you cut them as long as you have slack. We have slack. So, like I said, the new receptacle that we will be putting in has these terminals where you go straight into them rather than around, so we're going to go straight in and tighten down on them. In most of every case, you want to have your black wire going to the two gold or brass terminals on the new receptacle. Not sure why they had them backwards on the old receptacle. It would work either way. You're just going to have your polarity reversed. So, I'm going to go ahead and strip the wires back again. If you do not have a wire stripper, you can use a knife, or some people use their teeth. I wouldn't recommend it, especially if you don't know that the power's off. You put that wire in your mouth, you might find out. Alright, so we're going to get the new receptacle. In this case, there is no ground, which is why we're putting this GFCI. It was inspected and they said that there was no ground to this plug, so they insisted on having a GFCI plug so it would trip and stop at the breaker rather than needing the ground. And you're going to go ahead and loosen up the screws on your receptacle. If you just have wires coming into it, you would just use the top two. In this case, we have a wire coming in and a wire going out to another receptacle. And as it says here, hot wire on the gold side. And it even says white wire on this side. But you're going to put your neutral to the silver screws. And you're going to put your hot wire to the gold or brass side. Tighten them down good so they don't come loose. In most newer houses, there will for sure be a ground. In older houses, sometimes there is not a ground, but in the case that there would be a ground, you would hook it to this green screw right here. Go ahead and tighten that back up. line it back up and mount it back to the box. Like I said before, I use the impact for this because these screws are pretty long. I'm gonna get one started and then get the other one started. You can't tighten one all the way, or you'll be fighting to get it in. Like I said, if there is a ground wire from the panel, or a ground wire that is going to go to there from a grounded point, then you use it. In this case, there was not. And when something happens to this receptacle, it should trip off at this receptacle. Being a ground fault circuit interrupter, so if there's an issue, it should detect that and trip out. Go ahead and put the cover plate back on, and then what you need to do is go turn the power back on to make sure that everything is hooked back up correctly and working. So the power is back on. Lights are back on in the room. You can go ahead and grab the tester. And we see that we have power. Go ahead and get the voltmeter. Turn the light on to it so you can see. And we are going to go ahead and check for power again. I'm coming unplugged out the voltmeter. Now this light is on, so I'll go ahead and show you that. So in this case, this is saying we have power, which is what I was saying earlier. It can be misleading. It's detecting the power inside the wall where the wire is. So even up here, it's going to tell you have power. But when I check with the voltmeter, we do not have power at the receptacle because it came in the trip position. So once we hit reset, this light right here is lit up. Now we have 120 volts. So, and if you were using the other method where you plug something in and see if it works, then that would suffice. But that's pretty much it. You take your old receptacle, unwire it, and hook the wires back in the same way typically, but for whatever reason they had the hots to the silver side rather than the gold side. Like I said, it would still work, but depending on what you're using, it may cause an issue, being that the polarity is reversed. In air conditions with furnaces, if you plug in something like that, it'll throw a code on the board saying reverse polarity and cause issues, but in most situations it wouldn't matter. So anyway, receptacle is changed. If you have any questions, leave a comment, but it's pretty straightforward. You pull out the old receptacle, put the new receptacle in, you turn your light off after, and that's it. Appreciate y'all checking it out. Let me straighten these screws out before somebody in the comment has a fit. And y'all take it easy.